Hello friends. So once again I am back. So this time again in the lecture series on strength of materials. So I will be discussing a very basic law, commonly known as Hooke's law, and we will also discuss stress strain diagram. So let's start with the presentation without wasting any time. So let's have a small revision, whatever we have done so far. So in the previous lecture I have discussed in brief what is mechanical engineering. I just told you that mechanical engineering has been or can be categorized into different design groups, if you can recall. Different groups. So those groups were design group, thermal group, production group, industrial group. So we categorize most of the core subjects under these groups only. So this was what we discussed previously. Then we also discussed engineering mechanics. We have discussed its classification, how this subject engineering mechanics is being classified. And if you can recall, so this mechanics is classified into rigid body mechanics and deformable mechanics. So rigid body mechanics, we have discussed statics and dynamics, and mechanics of deformable bodies. It basically refers to the subject strength of materials, uh, we are currently discussing. So this was discussed last time, and then we discussed strength of material also. What is strength of material? Where I just told you that strength corresponds to the capacity of the material to absorb the applied load till it fails. And we have also discussed the material properties. The material can be isotropic and isotropic. Then, if you can recall, the material can be orthotropic or transversely isotropic. So that makes out our subject strength of materials. So this is what we discussed, the strength of materials. Then comes simple stress and strain, wherein I told you the definition of simple stress. What is simple stress? The resistance being offered by the body to the external load. This is called simple stress, and it is expressed as force per unit area. And what is strain? It is simply simple. It is the ratio of change dimension to the initial dimension. That's called strain. And so I will read it out again. The same thing. It is the resistance offered to the external load. This corresponds to stress, and change in the dimension corresponds to strain. And finally, we have also discussed true stress and strain. I just told you the difference between engineering stress and strain. What was, just to brush up, what was engineering stress? In case of engineering stress or strain, you stick to the initial dimensions, you stick to the initial cross-sectional area. But when you talk of true stress or true strain, you take instantaneous areas or instantaneous length. So that corresponds to your true stress and strain. So now, just moving ahead, here I would like to discuss the behavior, which it's very general. So generally, it has been observed the material will exhibit either elastic behavior or plastic behavior. So let's see what is elastic behavior. Say when the body is subjected to some sort of a external load, so it will exhibit some change in the dimensions, and say it is some sort of a deformation or deflection. So it means when the body is subjected to some sort of a load, it undergoes some sort of a deformation. And if the change dimensions can be brought back to their initial the initial dimensions, so on the removal of the load, or in other words, if we are able, if the dimension are restored on the removal of the applied load, so we can say the material is showing elastic behavior. It means the material regain back its initial dimensions. So, but to this elastic behavior, there is a limit. We cannot say that you will have a material which is all the time elastic. No, it is not possible. So there is a limit to this elastic behavior, and which is known as elastic limit. So this limit basically corresponds to the load beyond which the material will start behaving plastically, or I will say the material will not behave elastically. So that's one and the same thing. So elastic means the on the removal of the load, the material will regain back its original or initial dimensions. But on the other side, if the material is not able to restore its initial dimension, we say the material has undergone a plastic behavior. So let's see the plastic behavior also. As I told you, so the body is subjected to some external load, exhibits change in dimension, which we have discussed in the top also. So that change if is permanent, and the material is not able to regain back its original dimension, we'll say the material is exhibiting or showing plastic behavior. So these things are very important. So plastic behavior, I can quote examples. For examples, if you see the utensils uh, at your home, in your kitchen, so those are plastically deformed. So it has, see, elastic behavior has its own importance, and plastic behavior also has its own importance. We are not saying that we are negating, or we can say the elastic is negating plastic, or plastic is negating elastic. It's not like that. They both have their own importance. So going further, so one of the very important laws, which is known as Hooke's law. Hooke's law is also known as law of elasticity. So this law was given by a man whose name was Robert Hooke. He was an English scientist, and he discovered this law in around 1660s. That's when he discovered this law. So what is this law? Let me take an example. Let's suppose the picture on the slide, it shows a material. I have tried to just simplify it. It shows a material, and the let me just a second. I will use this pointer. So let's say the material is made up of infinite number of particles. So these spots, white circles show the particles. These are particles. These are all particles. Now, as per the Hooke's law, so I'm trying to explain that Hooke's law. Let's suppose in between two particles there is a spring. No, is that actually there is no? We don't have spring in the material, but this is sort of action. What I want to explain here. Let's suppose some load is being applied, and let's say this is the load what we have applied. Let me take. We have applied, so say, compressive load to both the sides. So what will happen now? Obviously, the metal will contract, and there will be deflection in the spring. These springs will deflect. These springs will deflect. And when you take off this load, the load applied, when you take off this load, so what will happen? The material will regain back its initial position, obviously because of spring. So this is the behavior of the material, which I am trying to explain with the help of this example. So this was discovered by Hooke, and he devised a law based on his experiments. So that's what I am going to discuss right now. Now, as I told you, when you apply load, say load or stress, so it will cause spring to deflect. So as per Hooke's law, that stress is proportional to strain. So that was given by Hooke's. Now, this proportionality is up to a limit. As we have discussed in the previous slides, there is an elastic limit. That point is very important. You have to understand that. So up till elastic limit, this proportionality will work. So stress is proportional to strain, that is within that elastic limit only. So it has been observed in majority of the materials that up to elastic limit, the deformation in the material is proportional to the applied load. So this observation was given by Hooke's, and it's commonly known as Hooke's law. The load corresponds to stress and the deformation corresponds to strain. So that's why above I have shown you here that stress is proportional to strain. Now let's see further. Now it is not mandatory that all elastic materials will have linear stress strain relation. Again, this is an important point. Let me repeat it again. We have defined Hooke's law, and Hooke's law is applicable within the elastic limit. Okay, but he says we have a variety of elastic materials, and we cannot say that for every material we will have linear stress and relation, a stress strain relationship. For example, you can say, let's take a rubber. Now, rubber is not having a linear relation. The stress applied on the rubber or the load applied on the rubber is not proportional, exactly proportional to the strain caused in the rubber. Similarly, similar behavior has shown by some metals also. This we will be discussing further. So this was just an introduction to Hooke's law. I hope it is clear. So the very basic point is, as per Hooke's law, stress is proportional to strain up till elastic limit. So yes, Hooke's law is helpful in designing the components, because as a designer, you design a lot of components which are to be used in some sort of machinery or automobiles. At some places, the elastic behavior of the material helps a designer in a number of ways. It will offer safety also. I will explain you this with some example. Now, so mathematically, so you can see the stress is proportional to strain, and if you replace this proportionality sign by equality, we have to introduce a constant. It's E is that constant, and it's called constant of proportionality, which is known as Young's modulus or modulus of elasticity. So this is the property of the material which we will be using while solving the examples. So stress, one more thing. So that engineering stress strain and true stress strain. So up to the elastic limit, the values of this engineering stress strain and true stress strain are almost similar. So again, important point that the deflection or deformation in metals is very small, and to measure such small deformation, we really need highly sensitive instruments. So what I'm trying to explain here is it is not possible to get the exact deformation. So that's why I've written this highly sensitive instruments are required. Because what we are discussing here is a stress strain. We are discussing a very important property of the material. So due to this very reason, due to this very sensitivity issue, the value of elastic limit in most of the metal decreases. So that's to be on the safer side. The value comes down. So that's why the Hooke's law for most of the metals is applied for a very narrow range. So this narrow range I will explain when I will take that stress strain diagram. So let's come to now stress strain curves. It's very important. So before I take stress strain curve, so let me tell you, for most of the materials, we already have stress strain curves. Because if I think as a designer, I have to produce a component which is to be used in some sort of machinery. So the values of say the ultimate values of stress. Ultimate means what load that material can bear. So it is of great help to a designer, because the component which is to be designed, it will be used in some sort of machinery. So using a component in machinery basically indicates that some sort of a load will be applied. And when load is applied to the component, stress will develop, which will lead to strain, and strain will further lead to failure. So as a designer, prior to the design, you should have full-fledged knowledge of the stress values of that material. So let's see stress strain curve. Now on your slide, we have a stress strain curve. Stress is along the y-axis, strain is along the x-axis. So now on the curve, you can see points O, A, B, C, D, E. And one more thing, before I start with uh, this is a curve which has been generated based upon the tensile tests performed on ductile materials. It's very important. We have ductile materials, we have brittle materials. So this nature of stress strain curve is for ductile materials only. So now let's see what are these points from O to A. So let me tell you what is point A. Now in this case, let's say I will start with the point B. Now point B is the elastic limit, which we have discussed in the previous slide. Now what is elastic limit? So it is basically at this limit, or we can say it is the largest stress that the material can bear without undergoing a permanent strain on the removal of the applied load. Once again I will repeat, point B is the elastic limit. Now what is the elastic limit? At this limit, the material exhibits or material withstand or bears the largest possible stress without undergoing a permanent deformation. And if you remove the load, there is no permanent deformation. So that is called elastic limit. Then what is point A? If B is the elastic limit, then what is point A? So as I've told in the previous slide, there are issues with the measurement of the strains because uh, it is not uh, possible to have such sensitive equipments. So that way, uh, it has been proposed by academicians, by researchers, that the elastic limit is replaced by a proportionality limit or proportional limit. And A point, this point A, is the proportional limit. So B is the elastic limit and A is the proportional limit. I hope it is clear. Now, what is the proportional limit? It is the stress at which this curve deviates from linearity. So means beyond point A, it does not show a linear behavior. So that is how we define proportional limit. So further, it has been seen that for majority of the engineering applications or majority of the engineering purposes, the limit of elastic behavior is replaced by a term which is called yield strength. Again, I will just rewind. See, B is the elastic limit, A is the proportionality limit. I have explained you the sort of the definition of this B and A. C is the yield strength. So it has been observed for majority of the applications or majority of the materials, the elastic behavior is expressed by yield strength. That is point C. Now, what is yield strength? So yield strength is expressed as the stress which causes a small amount of permanent deformation, say around 2%. Once again, I will repeat. At yield strength, we get a stress which causes or which produces a very small amount of permanent deformation. That's called yield strength. You can see on the stress strain curve. So on the horizontal line, you find this distance OO dash. So this gives that permanent strain, a very small value. So I hope it is clear. Or before moving ahead for points D and D, again I will brush up with this. So on a stress strain curve, B is the elastic limit. So at this elastic limit, the it gives you the largest value of the stress which a material can withstand without undergoing permanent deformation. But because of the sensitivity issues, it is not possible to get the exact value of this point B, that is the elastic limit. So that's why we go for proportional limit or limit of proportionality. So point A is the proportionality limit. Now at this limit, remember the stress strain curve deviates from its linear behavior. Now thirdly, point C is the yield strength. Now what is yield strength? At this point, the material produces a very small amount of permanent deformation, and that the as I told you, the slope OA, Hooke's law is applicable for the slope OA only. Just keep this thing in your mind. Hooke's law is applicable only for the slope OA up to that proportional limit. Now going further, so we have come to point C now. Plastic deformation has started taking place. This is all plastic deformation. Now, when the plastic deformation starts taking place, you can see that the material becomes more and more stronger. It's called a phenomenon takes place that's called strain hardening. So I'm not discussing strain hardening right now, but because of the strain hardening, the material becomes more stronger, and the load needed to deform the specimen to elongate the specimen further increases. So this load further increases up to point D. This is the maximum value of the load. And at this maximum value, if you divide the load by the cross-sectional area, it will give you ultimate tensile strength, a very important property of a material. So point D is the point of maximum load. So at this load, this load corresponds to ultimate tensile strength. Now, as I told you, the stress strain curve is for a ductile material, and with the load, the diameter of the ductile material start decreasing rapidly. And beyond this maximum load, the point D, the load needed to cause deformation, it drops off. It comes down till down to point E, and at point the material will fail. That's called the failure point or fracture point. So this is a stress strain diagram for a ductile material. So point B is the elastic limit where you get the largest stress, and there the material will not have any permanent deformation even if you remove the load. But because of that sensitivity, the measurement issues, a proportional limit is defined. The point we defined a new term, that's a proportional limit. And this limit or point A, the curve deviates from linearity. Then we go to point C is the yield strength. At yield strength, small amount of permanent deformation exists. And from point C to point D, strain hardening takes place. Because of strain hardening, material becomes stronger and requires more load for deformation. So point D is that limit. The maximum load absorbed by the material is at point D, and at point D you get ultimate tensile strength. Beyond point D, since the cross-sectional area of the material drops off, and because of that, the curve goes down and it comes to a point E. It reaches a point E where the material permanently fails. It is called failure point. So this is the basic stress strain diagram for ductile materials. Now, further, let's discuss the same for brittle materials. Now, in brittle materials also, we have, or we can say we have, let's say, purely brittle materials or a completely brittle materials. We can categorize like this. Now, why I say pure brittle materials? Because if the material is pure, it will fail at the yield point. So yield point will be the failure point for a brittle material. Let's example of glass. So this is this slope, this is the yield point which we have discussed earlier. At this point the material will fail. No strain hardening and nothing else. It is for brittle materials. But some of the brittle materials, you can take the example of I think it's white cast iron. They do fail, but they show a slight possibility of plastic plastic deformation before failure, like this. So this is some sort of a very small plasticity. So both of the material are your brittle. One is purely brittle material, which will fail at the yield point, and the other material will have small plastic deformation, and then they will fail. So one more thing I would like to express here. See, we are talking of ductile materials and brittle materials. In case of ductile materials, that ductility is very important, because when the material deforms, so a redistribution of localized stresses will take place, which is a advantage for the material, only for ductile materials. So let's move ahead. Now we will discuss failure, a very important parameter in the design, because every material has its life cycle and it fails. And for a designer, how he or she manages that failure, so that plays a great role. So the most important component in design of a machine element or a structural member is failure, and by all means the designer must ensure the success of its component, or prolonged life of the component designed. And load, dimensions, and material properties play important role in the design. So what design basically means, you are going to create a component. Creating a component means some dimension, but those dimensions shall be safe. That's very important. And again, I will recall that I told you in the previous presentation. Remember three words: load, stress, and strain. This is strength of material. Now, failure mainly depends upon, let's see how a component fails. Deformation. If there is a deformation, it is a failure. If there is yielding, that is also a failure. If there is fracture, definitely it is a failure. Now, some of the, let's see, causes. Say elastic deformation can cause failure due to what? Let's discuss that. So when large deflection is taking place, and when the system is in equilibrium. See, equilibrium means sort of isostatic behavior, or you can say gradual load is being applied. So gradual means very slowly the load is being applied. So we can say during the application of the load, the system exists in almost in equilibrium. So there say when the large deflection takes place in the system which is in equilibrium. As an example, the deflection of beams. So that is a failure. So talking of the civil structures, when the buildings are created or fabricated, so there they lay out big beams. And you can well imagine, if the beam deflects, there is a large deflection in the beam, the whole roof will come down. So that is a deflection. Then deflection when the system is not in equilibrium. For example, if you have a column, sudden buckling, or suddenly it has deformed. The sudden deformation or buckling is an example when the system deflection takes place in the system which is not in equilibrium. Then failure caused by large deflections. Now, no doubt they have to manage those failures, but they are managed by modulus of elasticity. Now, what is modulus of elasticity? That E, that is the constant of proportionality given by Hooke's law. Because that Hooke's law, if you remember, E equals to the ratio of stress by strain. It deals with both stress and strain. So managing that property, the modulus of elasticity of a material, you can manage those large dimensions. So again, secondly, failure due to yielding. So yielding, as we have seen in stress strain diagram. So it is a sort of a plastic deformation. So the plastic deformation takes place when it's but obvious when the applied load exceeds the elastic limit of the material. The failure will take place. With yielding, material undergoes a permanent change and thus restricts component to work properly. Suppose you have designed a component, it is to be used somewhere, and where you are going to use your component, that space limitation will be there because we are talking of mechanical components. So their motions are relative. Motion of one component is related to the motion of other component. And if your component, the dimension of the component has yielded, it has deformed plastically, it will affect the whole system, and that is a failure. Then failure due to fracture. So, when let's just at what point it takes place? When sudden failure takes place in brittle materials. So that is failure. As I told you, in brittle materials, yield point is the failure point, the ultimate failure point. Or when the material is subjected to progressive failure or fatigue. Now, fatigue generally happens because of repetitive loading, because of reversal loading, or say cyclic loading. If the component is subjected to cyclic loading, say let's say uh, after every fixed time interval, again the same load will come, or we can say our component is subjected to load of in the range of say plus 100 newtons to minus 100 newtons. So that repetition or reversal load or cyclic loading, it causes fatigue in the material, and it leads to the crack propagation, which is nothing but a fracture. So these were some of the causes which we have discussed. So we have related failure, and we have related the cause of failure with respect to deformation or deflection, then yielding, that is plastic deformation, and then fracture. So let me take an example. Let's say this is a component. This is a component. It is similar to a tensile test component. Suppose I wanted to test any material, any ductile material, say copper or iron or aluminium. So I will apply load on this material, tensile load on the material. Say, let's say this is the tensile load applied on the material. Now, these two are the supports. These two are the supports, and this is the gauge length. This is the main length which will participate in deflection. This is the main length. Now, if the material is ductile, what will happen? This will be the shape of the material. Its length will get elongated, but you can see a neck has been formed. It is encircled. This is the neck formation. What's neck formation? The area has reduced gradually. No, it has yielded. So this is a failure. So it has become weak. You see, because stress is, if you go by that formula, load per unit area. No, area is decreased. The stress will increase. If stress will increase, you will get increased strains, and finally the material will fail. So that is a failure. So that's what I want to discuss here. So let me more example. This is on the slide. You can see it's a bike chain. So I will take it as an example. See, these bike chains are made up of ductile materials only. You will never find a bike chain made of brittle materials. So see, selection of the materials safeguards your design also. In the when you drive your bike, you can see after a certain time, your chain will create some sound. There will be a slack in the chain. So what happens because of ductility, say I will take this example. So there is a tensile load on every link. I'm taking one link, so it will elongate. If elongate, it has yielded, the length will increase, but still you are able to drive your bike, and you will get an indication that something wrong is there. No doubt, I am driving my bike, but it is not that efficient. So you will go and replace this link or replace the chain. But if let's imagine if it had been made of brittle material, so what would have happened? All of a sudden, it will fail, and the accident may take place. So you can see the selection of material for application plays a great role. So that's why the designer has to ensure, for ensuring safety, he should be well versed with the subject strength of materials. As I told you earlier also, so this subject is nothing but uh, here what we do in strength of material, we try to make you aware or make you practice the mathematical relations of various stresses and strains, various theories, and then you apply the same on the same practically. Strength of material being applied practically, it's nothing but design. So this was all about your this about this presentation. So thank you very much for listening. Again, if you have suggestions, you can drop in the chat box. So hope to see you soon in the coming lecture. Thanks again.